So who would win in a fight between Freddy Krueger and Mr. Boogedy Boogedy Boo? We'll come to that later. As for the moment, happy Halloween, almost. Freddy Krueger has had a huge effect on my life. I'm probably too desensitized to any kind of fear now, so nothing really scares me anymore. But Freddy, he's still in there. Still in the back portion of my brain, lurking. The dark origins of Freddy Krueger have their origins south of here, in Dallas. You see, this is the road right here where President Kennedy was assassinated. Elm Street. And now, here we are in Springwood, Ohio. A Midwestern Americana paradise with a dark secret. Much less palm trees here than the Springwood, Ohio depicted in the films. Nevertheless, this is old Freddy Krueger's stomping grounds. At least it was. He was originally called the Springwood Slasher. But he's not the only one who killed children. But now, let's get to the dark origins of Mr. Boogedy. It was a made-for-TV film. It had a star-studded cast: Richard Masur, the boy from Alf, the boy from Married with Children. Gomez Addams played Neil Witherspoon, who had a pop-up book, storybook, about Mr. Boogedy's dark origins. Mr. Boogedy was originally called William Hanover. 300 years ago, he fell in love with the widow Marion. But she had a pesky boy named Jonathan. He got rid of them both. See, Mr. Boogedy is a child killer also, in a Disney film. Plus they both have pizza faces. Mr. Boogedy haunts the house owned by Richard Masur and his family in the movie Mr. Boogedy, and I assume Bride of Boogedy too, but I haven't seen that one. These movies are hard to find, unlike the Freddy Krueger series. Wes Craven came up with the idea for Freddy Krueger when he was a little boy. He woke up one night, heard muttering, mumbling. He went to the window, saw a man down on the street, on the sidewalk. He looked just like Freddy Krueger. He looked up at a young Wes Craven. Wes jumped back, closed the curtains and hid. He waited a long time and eventually built up the nerve to go back and look out the window again, only to find the man still staring back at him, smiling an evil smile. This terrified young Wes Craven, and it was the inspiration for Freddy Krueger, and also some sleep deaths from some Hmong refugees. But I find the childhood story way more terrifying. A Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1984. But another film of the early 80s came out a couple of years later, Mr. Boogedy. What do these two movies have in common? Jennifer, who plays the daughter in Mr. Boogedy, was in another Wes Craven film. Sister friend, imaginary friend, I forget the name of the film. I probably should have done research before this. But who would win in a fight between Mr. Boogedy and Freddy? Let's find out. A little later. Separated by only 2 years, Nightmare on Elm Street and Mr. Boogedy have a lot in common. They both have messed up faces, like a scrunched up hamburger. Also, both have a nursery rhyme. Of course we all know, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Mr. Boogedy has one that's like, something, something, boogedy out the door. The narrator talks over it. Scary though.
Here comes Boogedy out the door. A 1 is a 2 is a 3.
The children called him Mr. Boogedy.
There were many sequels of A Nightmare on Elm Street, but my favorite appearance of Freddy Krueger is in the now defunct channel The Key of Awesome's Modern Monster Mash music video. I thought that appearance captured his character quite well. Nah, just kidding. Wes Craven's New Nightmare is terrifying, and I can't recommend it enough. Have you seen the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street? I haven't. Is it any good? Comment below or above. As for the future of Mr. Boogedy, who knows? Not me.
Here comes Boogedy out the door. A 1 is a 2 is a 3.
The children called him Mr. Boogedy.
A little personal history about Freddy. My dad showed me that movie, A Nightmare on Elm Street. I must have been 5 or 6. A little too young, I think. The scariest part, I didn't care about all the blood and stuff, but the scariest part is when Nancy retrieved his hat from her dream. I remember a scene where she looks under the rim and it says Fred Krueger inside. And that terrified me. It meant it was real. That scene never existed. She tells her mother or someone later that it says Fred Krueger in the rim, but you never see it. So I don't know whether I saw a deleted scene director's cut version that hasn't seen the light of day in a very long time, or my impressionable mind made it up. Anyway, later that night, my mum comes in my room, like midnight. Sean, why aren't you asleep yet? I can't sleep, Mum. Freddy Krueger's gonna kill me. But he didn't. It's getting pretty dark and late and past curfew. So I suppose we should get to the premise of this video. Who would win in a fight between Mr. Freddy Krueger and Mr. Boogedy Boogedy? Let's find out. Well, Freddy Krueger is owned by New Line Cinema, which is a pretty small company, relatively speaking, as opposed to Disney, who owns Mr. Boogedy. So, Boogedy wins. I feel like Kurt Cobain in this sweater. I hope my Halloween turns out better than his. Oh no, wait, that was River Phoenix. Rest in peace. Subscribe!